Welcome to Planning Ahead with CMS. As part of our ongoing series on highways, today we are turning our focus north of the border to explore the legal landscape of roads in Scotland. Joining me to delve into the Scottish road system is Erin, a planning lawyer based in our Scottish team. Welcome, Erin.
Thanks, Nicola. Happy to be here.
Now, last week we talked about highways in England and the legal intricacies there. To kick off today's episode, could you tell us a bit about how roads work in Scotland?
Absolutely, Nicola. Well, firstly, I should say that in Scotland we don't have the concept of highways, just roads, and they're governed primarily by the Roads Scotland Act 1984. So unlike the Highways Act 1980 in England, the definition of a road under the Scottish Act is any way over which there's a public right of passage. So that includes footways, footpaths, cycle tracks and carriageways, so it encompasses a broader range or a wider scope than the English definition.
Oh, that's really interesting. So it's much more inclusive in terms of what is considered a road. And what does that mean in practice?
That's a great question, Nicola. It has far-reaching implications. It means that the creation, maintenance, improvement, closure and diversion of Scottish roads encompasses a larger variety of routes.
So how are new roads created in Scotland?
They can be created by construction, dedication, prescription or statutory order. So the process of designing and granting approval for new streets is subject to both planning and roads laws. The 1984 Act serves as the kind of principal legal document for the creation of new roads. And Section 21 of that Act mandates that all new roads constructed by anyone other than the Roads Authority must obtain roads construction consent before any construction work can begin.
So that kind of makes it a two-tier process. So what is a roads construction consent?
Yeah, so it's a formal approval process that ensures that the proposed construction meets specific standards and requirements. And as you said in the past, most local authorities only began the formal roads construction consent approval process once planning permission had been granted or when the final layout of the road had been agreed upon. So this has effectively, as you said, created a two-step approval process. First get your planning permission and then obtain your roads construction consent.
And when it comes to stopping up roads or diverting them, is there a special process in place for that?
Yeah, so in Scotland, the procedure to stop up or divert a road, be that temporarily for works or permanently for a development, is managed by the relevant local authority or planning authority under the powers granted by the 1984 Act or the Planning Act 1997. Stopping up roads requires a legal order known as the stopping up order, and this process involves getting approval from the relevant authority.
So are there ever any objections to stopping up roads?
Yeah, there are room for public objections and in some cases a public inquiry. So where an order is made by local authorities or a planning authority and there are unresolved objections, the decision on confirmation of the order then goes to the Scottish ministers. And that's often following a hearing or inquiry. However, for trunk roads, the power to stop up or divert a road lies solely with the Scottish ministers.
So it goes quite high up then in terms of the decision-making process. And let's talk about trunk roads and motorways a bit more. How are they regulated in Scotland?
Yeah, so they're managed by the Scottish ministers. The responsibility for managing them is typically delegated to Transport Scotland, and that's the national transport agency in Scotland. The trunk road network stands as the single largest asset of the Scottish ministers and it ranges from the M8, which connects Glasgow and Edinburgh, to rural areas or rural roads in rural areas and many more in between. So I think there's roughly 3,500 kilometres of trunk roads and motorways across the country and they carry 35% of all traffic in the country and 60% of heavy goods vehicles.
Wow, that is some undertaking. So it's a very substantial network. And how are these roads maintained?
So Transport Scotland usually contracts with operating companies to ensure the maintenance and safety of Scottish trunk roads. So 4 regional units manage these services and they have responsibility for carrying out maintenance tasks, which include infrastructure repairs, vegetation control, drainage, cleaning and weather-related tasks. Any developers that need to carry out works on the Scottish trunk roads normally have to liaise with these operating companies in order to facilitate their development.
So that's a lot to think about logistically. How does Transport Scotland fit in overall to Scotland's transport strategy then?
So it plays a crucial role in implementing the Scottish Government's National Transport Strategy. So that was introduced in 2020, and its goal is to foster a sustainable, inclusive, safe and accessible transport system for the well-being and prosperity of Scotland over the next 20 years.
That's a nice story. Thanks very much for that, Erin. It's really clear that roads in Scotland encompass a really broad range and are governed by a distinct set of laws and procedures. That wraps up our dive into Scottish roads for today. Thank you for coming along.
Thanks for having me, Nicola.
Absolutely no problem at all. Thank you. And thanks to those who have tuned in. Remember, if you have any questions or feedback, please get in touch with our team and join us next time as we continue our exploration of highways.